So let's get into the big secret when it comes to business success, which is venture capital funding. So whether you've never even heard of venture capital funding or you're curious about how you can use this in order to accelerate the growth of your business or your startup, today we're talking about what venture capital is, how it works, and more importantly, how you can use this to get your ideas, your products, your business, and most importantly, your startup out there so you can impact the world for the positive. My name is Salvador Briggman, and since 2012, I have been demystifying the world of success when it comes to getting new products out there, new ideas, new businesses funded in really different ways in order to actually accomplish that. And I hope that not only by the end of this video, you feel more confident going out there to the capital markets, tapping into that powerhouse to be able to actually get your project or your business funded. But in addition, you think a little bit bigger than maybe you have up until this point in time. I've worked with clients and students who have small businesses that are raising money and that are, maybe having friends and family help out when it comes to that, are drawing on their credit cards, their 401k, etc. I've also worked with large established businesses that already have venture capital funding to the tunes of millions of dollars, and they're deploying that, and they usually bring me in to help with marketing and sales when it comes to that. They're deploying that in order to create products and to sell them in the marketplace. And I'll tell you a little bit of a secret. The founder or the entrepreneur who is business number A, a small business just getting started, versus an established venture capital backed company, they have a lot of the same traits. They're both fearless, persistent, wanting to impact the world for the positive, wanting to build wealth for themselves and the people around them that are connected to them. But there's one big difference, and that is their strategy. And that's what we're talking about today. So what is venture capital funding? How does this actually work and how can you use it, right? I think the easiest way to really understand what venture capital funding is to think about it in terms of the supply chain between an idea, just starting with an idea, to actually having a full large business like Facebook, Uber, one of the big tech companies that are out there, really understanding the stages that they go through. And these are called growth milestones. Let me start to actually get into this. So it first usually starts with called a pre-seed funding stage. So pre-seed funding, you can write that down if you're taking notes. Pre-seed funding is when you're drawing on the resources, the funds of people like friends, family members, maybe an angel investor, your 401k, your credit cards, your savings, and you're plowing that all into your startup or your company in order to have a proof of concept, to have a prototype, to have a product that you can actually show the market and get some pre-market validation, or you can have some product market fit, going on the lean startup term, which was pioneered by Eric Ries. Pre-seed stage, when it comes to the stage of a startup, is really about getting to the initial growth stage and getting product market fit and having a proof of concept. Typically in this stage, venture capitalists are not involved terribly much. You're probably more so thinking about, again, friends and family, credit cards, maybe an accelerator or an incubator who can also help you along the way. We're typically thinking about those, as well as crowdfunding. Crowdfunding has also emerged as another tool, and I got started in the crowdfunding industry in 2012 to help creators, entrepreneurs, and really technology enthusiasts and inventors to get their business out there, to do a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, on Indiegogo. You can now also do crowdfunding campaigns on websites like wefunder.com, where you're doing an equity crowdfunding campaign, right, and giving away shares in the company. That's really the next tool when it comes to pre-seed stage. Then we jump into seed stage, and this is really when venture capital begins to play a role in the actual funding of a business. So in seed stage, this is typically when you already have a prototype or a proof of concept or traction or product market fit in some way. And you're really looking for the funds and the resources to grow the company. So that could be, for example, investing more into product, into marketing, into sales, developing your operations, right? And really kind of becoming, putting on the big boy pants and becoming an actual company. And this is really the seed stage. And seed stage is not only when you're beginning to court angel investors to actually write a check into your company, but it's also going to be those venture capitalists as well. So we think of, for example, Series A, Series B, Series C, as we're hitting different growth milestones and going through these different stages. Now, when it comes to venture capitalists specifically, there's a big difference between venture capitalists and angel investors, and also a big difference between that and more like a retail investor. Now, when we talk about venture capital, we're talking about individuals or groups of individuals who have put together a fund, and that fund is funded by other people who have put their money into the venture capital fund. And those venture capitalists are basically going out there and they're allocating that capital. They're deciding, okay, we have this big fund and we need to distribute all this capital to these startup companies. What is our strategy going to be to get a return for our investors? So you kind of almost think of them more as like fund manager if you want to think of them that way. And their goal is to get a return for the people that have put the money into their fund. Now, they may or may not, right, have some skin in the game when it comes to that, but typically they're going to be thinking about how can we get a return on investment? How can we do this in a particular time frame? And more importantly, what are the industries or the types of companies that we need to be investing in order to experience an ROI? So you have your first answer at this point in the video, which is that a venture capitalist is really just a player in the capital markets who's going to be providing capital for your business. In exchange for this, they're typically going to be asking for a percentage of equity. They're going to be asking for a piece of the pie, right? And maybe preferred terms as well. And as the company grows and gets more and more revenue and more staff and employees, eventually you're going to sell that company or you're going to do an IPO. And at that point in time, that venture capitalist is going to get a return on their investment or a return on their money, right? For the people who have put the money into the fund. When it comes to that venture capitalist, if they're investing in 10 different startup companies, maybe one of them becomes a winner and makes the boatload of all of that pot in terms of the return on investment when it comes to the money that they're earning for their clients. Want to take all the stress out of fulfilling your Kickstarter rewards? Fulfillment is the turnkey solution that puts product delivery on autopilot. The Top Campaigns uses trusted high-tech provider to store, package, and ship their products. Focus on growing your business. Leave shipping to the experts. Don't wait. Get a custom quote from Fulfillment today. Link in the description. So at this point in the video, you should be like, okay, Sal, I understand I got to give away a percentage of equity, number one. Number two, there's going to be different rounds of funding. And probably when I get more into the seed stage round is when venture capitalists might begin to play a role, right? And I'm going to need to court these individuals. I'm going to need to put together a slide deck. I'm going to need to show proof of concept. I'm going to also need to show the business plan. There's not only going to be an assessment of the idea of me as a founder and also the metrics so far when it comes to the growth of the company, but there's also going to be a due diligence phase where they actually look through the financials of the company and to decide whether or not they want to invest, and as well take into account how big is this market? How big of a business can this actually become? What is the unique selling point when it comes to this specific product? So we went through point number one, which is what is venture capital? Let's get into point number two, which is how the heck does venture capital work? So I think an easy way to conceptualize this is to really focus on what the venture capitalist is doing and when they're deciding on investing and how they're actually going through that process. So first of all, they're really looking to get a return on the money that they invest in your startup company, right? And when it comes to that, if you look at the IRR or internal rate of return, if you sum up the return they've gotten every single year that they've invested in the company, plus when they actually sell the company or do an IPO, if you look at the IRR, they're usually looking at between a 25 to a 30% return on an annual basis. In addition, like I said, if they're investing in 10 companies, typically one of them is actually going to be the winner, is going to make up the pot when it comes to all of those returns. In order for them to have such a massive return, they have to be able to look at a company and a product that can scale. It has to become a big enough business in a short amount of time, typically between 5 to 7 years, in order to actually have that kind of return for them to have an exit and to be able to say that they did a good job. Venture capitalists, a lot of the times, will also look at very specific industries. So you might have a venture capital firm that's really looking at startups or mid-stage startups or early-stage startups that are based in the technology industry or in the food industry or in the entertainment industry. So you have different investors that are really specialized by industry because that's maybe what they know, they understand, that's what their investment strategy is. The next thing you should be aware of when it comes to really understanding how venture capital work is sort of the deal process. So it's going to take time for you to actually raise money as a startup company. Now, during that time, you're going to be sending out your pitch deck, your idea, your project. You're going to be networking, getting referrals, all that kind of stuff. And as a venture capitalist stumbles upon a really great business or product or team founder or an industry and a good match between all of these, they're then going to begin to actually assess the idea. So for example, there might be a pitch session after they go through your slides and might have different questions related to that. They're really going to be assessing the type of people that are working within that company, their specialities, how good are they at what they're actually doing. They'll be looking at the market itself, the USP, all those kinds of metrics. This is really when due diligence happens, and they're going to make a decision between you and many other startup companies in terms of whether or not they actually want to put their funds to use. After their investment happens, this is arguably when a lot of the value also comes into play, because they can not only give you advice and feedback on your strategy. They might have a lot of experience in the industry themselves and be able to give you some tailored recommendations, but also introduce you to other key players that you should know in your industry, or people who can help you out with things like marketing or sales or scaling your internal business or understanding the management side of the equation, or how to actually improve your business model to make more for your investors and other stakeholders. I want to get into the next point, which is really, how do you get this funding, right? How do you actually go out there and get venture capital funding? Well, of course, it is quite competitive when it comes to the capital markets and really understanding how to get a venture capital investment. However, companies get them all the time, right? You can watch and you can browse through different websites. You can see how companies every single month, every single week are getting venture capital funding, not just in the United States, but all over the world. So the capital has already been raised and there's already people there, the venture capitalists, who need to deploy that capital. So why not to you? Why not set your sights bigger? Why not be willing to actually expand your horizons when it comes to what you think is possible, and really start to ask yourself, how could I actually do that? How could I actually get there? If you would like to talk about this more seriously and also explore other ways of getting to that pre-seed stage in terms of using equity crowdfunding or traditional crowdfunding or other methods of actually getting your company funded, go and book an individual coaching call with me at the link down below. And we can do an intensive coaching session to really understand the best strategy for your unique case, and as well, how to speed up this entire process and also introduce you to many tools and techniques that you probably are not aware of. So go down below and book an individual coaching call with me. That's a tiny bit of an investment, but it's definitely one that's well worth it. Second of all, you need to evaluate where you are on this continuum. Are you in the pre-seed stage, or are you in the seed stage, or what stage of growth are you in as well when it comes to that company? First, you have to understand where you are on this map. Number two, what are the assets that you need in order to get to the next stage, right? What growth milestones do you need to hit? Or what marketing and sales materials do you need to explain your idea to venture capitalists? Number three, where are these people? How could you connect or get referrals to these individuals? Do you need to be a part of an accelerator or an incubator? Do you need to actually get active on LinkedIn and start connecting with these people in your local area? Do you need to, heaven forbid, get on a plane and fly to these people and change your location to be able to go to a conference or an industry event to actually connect with these people? There's so much more advice that I have on this front, and definitely give me a thumbs up if you have liked this video so far, and come subscribe if you want more content just like this. The capital markets are not rocket science, and founders who are no more intelligent than you and probably don't even have a better idea than you, and maybe even have worse credentials than you, are getting funding as we speak from venture capitalists. So there's really nothing that's holding you back except from yourself, and being willing to actually go out there to become informed and educated about this, to be willing to plow through, crush through those milestones. And also, as a founder, this is your responsibility, is to actually fund the company. If you do nothing else, go and check out my podcast episodes where I've interviewed over 400 successful entrepreneurs who have successfully raised money in both the pre-seed and the seed stage. And you can discover how they were actually able to get funding from people like friends and family, and also funding from venture capitalists, and as well, equity crowdfunding campaigns on WeFunder.com and many other platforms. But my name is Salvador Briggman, and this is definitely a journey. You're not gonna have all the answers just from one video, but if you are tenacious and you continue to go through that YouTube wormhole, I'm telling you, there's so much great content out there. And I hope that this video at least began to scrape away some of that mystery when it comes to how to get your company funded via venture capital.